Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? It's good. You know what the cow said to the farmer on a cold winter morning? Thanks for the warm hand. Anyway, it gets better. Don't worry, it'll get better. Folks, I have a very short amount of time with you this afternoon. I very much appreciate Duncan, the Forage and Grassland Association, your association, for inviting me in to do this, and of course my association with the holistic managers in the room. Thank you, all of you, for being here. And I have a very short amount of time. Whenever I do a 5-day course on leadership, I do a year-long program for leaders. So whenever I only have an hour, I'm reminded of the words of Elizabeth Taylor to her 8th husband on their wedding day. She turned to her 8th husband, apparently the story goes, and she said to her 8th husband, "Don't worry, dear, I won't keep you long." So I won't keep you long today, but I hope to keep you engaged. I will promise to do that. I have been inspired so far today. First of all, John and Deanne, that was an inspiring presentation. You know what inspires me? I had supper with those two last night. What inspires me about those two is the connection that they have with each other and the relationship that they're building together, the legacy that they're building together. All that stuff they talked about, that's just the tool for communicating to each other and building those relationships, right? And I love those bird guys. Those bird guys, they set the standard very high up here. That, you know, that's the canary in the coal mine. That's the indicator of the ecosystem. I love it. I love it. But I'll tell you, and by the way, where is Amy? Amy, where are you? Amy came, I don't know if you know this, but Amy came all the way from Yorkshire, England for this today and flew across the pond, and you and Aaron, it's amazing. Thank you for being here. That's amazing. All right. And here's what else inspired me, lunch. Now, it wasn't the meal that inspired me, but I had lunch with Ralph and his grandson, Ty. Ralph, where are you? Where are you two? All right. You know what? This guy is in the middle of struggling with succession. And I'm not here today to give you the answers of how you move your succession. You need a whole team, accountants, lawyers, each other, to sort this stuff out, finding the right answer. But what I loved about it was him and his grandson talking about what matters in their life and that relationship. And he sweats this stuff. He's got an interesting challenge ahead of him, and he's sweating it. That's why he didn't have any hair, because he pulls it all out at night. And what happens is this. What I love is the fact that you're struggling with it. Not that you have answers, but that you're struggling with it. Because what it means is you care. The easy thing is, let's just sell the place, divide it all up, and be done with it. That's the easy road. And that might be the right road to take, but he's struggling with it. And he doesn't have answers, but he's asking the questions, and he's creating the dialogue. My goal in the next hour is to tell you how some of the ingredients need to be in place to have the conversations that will lead to right decisions around this thing called succession. Now, I have to tell you, that's my crew. We just went through a wedding this last spring. When you get to be a grandfather, I'm going to mostly speak about being a grandfather. When you get to be a grandfather, your kids are launched, you get grandkids, you start to reflect on your life. What really matters? What's important in life? Why are we doing all this stuff, folks? Why are we doing all this financial management? Folks, listen, no other success can compensate for failure in the home. No other success can compensate. And no matter what happens to the farm, let's sustain our families. That's what matters to me. The farm is just the tool to create what matters in your life. Let's make sure we keep it in perspective. What I love today is the babies in here and the calmness of the mothers. That's what matters. And that you're being introduced. I'm inspired by this whole association because this is a room of thinkers. This is not a room of complainers. This is a room of thinkers that want to make it better. That want to make it better in this planet. And there's very few of us that are really putting our 25 cents in to say, I'm going to do my job. It might not be a lot, but I'm going to do my job. All right, let's have a thinking about this. I can't talk about leadership. By the way, I tell you how I got into this whole business. I'm trained as a family counselor, and I was a family counselor for 10 years back in the 80s, although I still take on families from time to time. I was a family counselor full-time back in the 80s in Lethbridge, and I got calls from lawyers and tax accountants, and they're sitting around a kitchen table of a farmer. And they said, I'm here to do a succession plan, but these guys don't need a lawyer. They don't need an accountant because they're not talking to each other. And before I come in here and do this, they got to talk to each other. Could I bring you out? And I spent most of those 10 years, about 3/4 of the families I worked with, sitting around tables on farms, just having people talk to each other and having conversations and just understanding each other. That's all it is. It's really basic stuff. It's not rocket science, but I did. But then what happened was I got also involved in doing presentations for parents, and I got business executives there. So for the last 35 years, I've been working in the field of leadership development and teaching what I learned about families and about farmers, and I bring it into corporations. But this is my roots. These are my roots, and I want to come back to my roots, who are my family. I can't talk about leadership without honoring my parents. What I learned from my parents. Here, I'll show you what I learned, some of the things. There's my mom's farm. 900 square feet that shack was. 10 kids were raised in that shack. You know what? I got a little clue for you. If you want to have a good succession, poverty really helps. It really helps if you don't have any money and you're not worth anything. It really helps. If you want to raise accountable kids, poverty really helps. You know, my mother lived through 4 pandemics. I think she'd say we're a little spoiled today if she were around. She lost 2 siblings to illness that would have been cured today. See, they didn't have a world-class healthcare system they need to take care of. People just died. So what she taught me was this: there isn't 1 ounce of entitlement in my mom's bones. Not 1 ounce. What she taught me was always make your gratitude bigger than your circumstances. Always make your gratitude bigger than your circumstance. What would you rather get? And Don Campbell's the guy who taught me this. What would you rather your parents leave you? A rich financial inheritance with no character and values, or character and values and no money? See what I got from my mother? You know what I got from my mother? I got her character. I got her values. She died broke. She spent all my inheritance as she should have. I don't have any right to that inheritance, folks. And none of it. She gets to do with it whatever you want. And you know what? You get to do with it whatever you want. You know when succession planning starts? It's a process. It's a process. It's not an event. It's a process. You know when it starts? When you bring your baby home from the hospital. Look down at that baby and say, you know what? None of this is your right. That's when you start to communicate. So there's no entitlement. But my mother just inspired me. She left me 3 things in her will. She said, I leave to my son David my library and my love for learning. I got all her books. You know, I have a book in my library that was written to my mother in 1930, signed to my mother by a woman named Nellie McClung. Wow. Her love for learning. Second thing I got, her piano. I got her old 1905 Heinzmann piano. You can't buy pianos like that anymore. And I, with it, my love for music, and I know you have a love for music. Please take that love and bring it and leave it with your kids. Instill your kids the love of music. Third thing I got is her quote book. I got a book that thick full of her quotes. And in that book, she had a definition of maturity. You know what it is? The ability to do a job, whether or not you're supervised. Finish a job once you start it. Carry money without spending it. Now there's 2 out of 3 is not bad, eh? And number 4, be able to bear an injustice without wanting to get even. That's the kind of person my mother was. That's the inheritance I got from my mother. The other thing I want to say is we were raised on a farm. And you know, they didn't make their sole income on the farm. We had horses, and we had hay. But I was exposed to farmers. I worked on pig farms. I worked on cattle farms. I was exposed to agriculture. And most of what I learned today, and by the way, up in that top left-hand corner there, That was our stove. We heated that stove. We had no running water, except my dad would say, yeah, you got to go out in the backyard and run for the water. We had no running water for 3 years. It was the coldest winter on record in Alberta from 1967 to 1970. Those 3 years, it got below 30 below for more than 30 consecutive days for 3 consecutive years. And that was the year that I will tell you, it was the toughest years of my life. And they were the best years of my life. Those were the years that we valued connection. Dad and I would spend all Saturday chopping wood, taking the chainsaw and cutting it up, because if we didn't cut wood, you weren't warm that week. We had no central heating. Those were the days. I'm not going to tell you they were the good old days. They were just the old days. But there was a lot of goodness in those days. Family connections. You tell me, this thing called an internet, we're out in a device, how on earth are we going to build those kind of relationships today? Anyway, I'm grateful for my upbringing. I'm in the middle of a transition myself right now. We've been on the land for the last 20 plus years, raised our kids in this place, on the edge of a 100-acre nature conservancy, and my wife and I sat down this winter and we said, you know what? Let's downsize. It's time to reestablish our values, we know what our values are, reestablish our priorities. And I'm in the middle of this succession, and I wish that my daughter would have been interested in the business, but she's got her own life, and that's a story that I'll tell you later on today. Can't make kids do stuff. They have to be where they need to be. But now we're starting to really evaluate. So we've moved into town, we bought a smaller place, we know we're getting rid of half our stuff. We probably got, I love it, just giving it away. You spend the first half of your life gathering stuff, and then the next half of life's getting rid of it. It's an interesting thing, and it's so freeing. We've furnished 3 nephews' apartments, and just giving stuff away to Goodwill is freeing, liberating, but it's also very frightening, because now I'm redefining myself. Who am I today? My dad taught me, it's not retirement. It's not about retirement. It's about reordering your priorities, stopping and thinking. He always used to say, I'm not retiring, I'm retreading, reinventing yourself. So I'm in that place. So I'm going to show you now, I'm going to bring this down to a family level. I'm going to show you the dynamics of a family, but instead of telling you, I'm going to actually show you. So this is a family that I'm going to say is in my parents' generation. These were the first families that I started to work with in the 80s. And I want you to just compare this family to your family and see how you've evolved since these families. So I'm going to just, for the sake of this, they only got 2 kids. There's usually more than 2 kids, but we only got a couple of minutes here. So I'm going to, this is George and June. Now they would have met around the 1950s. They got a son, Paul, and a daughter, Rianne. So here's what I want to do. We're going to have some fun with this. I need 5 volunteers. 5 volunteers come up for about 5 minutes. Some good, strong, agile. I need 2 men and 2 women. Can I get some volunteers? Somebody come on up. Have some fun with this, would you? Anybody? Yeah, yes, come on up. Come on. You don't have to put your hands up. Just come on up. 5. And guess what? When you come up first, you get to choose. You get to pick. By the way, thanks for doing this. Let's give this guy a round of applause. What's your name?
Colin.
Colin? Thank you, buddy. Vanessa. Welcome. Go, pick 3 more people. Actually, we got an in-law here, too. So that's going to be Megan. So we need, there's the cup. We need 2 women and a man. Duncan, come on up, buddy. Thanks for volunteering to do this. Let's give Duncan a round of applause. Thanks, Duncan. And you are? Karen, welcome. All right. We need 1 more woman, but that'll come in a second. All right, now what we got here is this. George and June. Now there's always, we got another one. Fantastic. You are? Dana. Of course. I know you. Now it's a little later. Okay. Now, you wonder, what am I going to do with these folks? Let me show you here. George and June get married. Now, who wants to be George? Who wants to be June? June. George and June. Here's George and June. Okay, come out here. Now, they got married. Now, let me ask you this. What do you suppose George learned in his life about how to show love? He's come home from the war 5-6 years ago, farming. How do you think he knows how to show love to his family? It's called working. He's going to show love by working. And that's his generation. So you are out working. Now, every once in a while, they do get together. Now, how does June show love? Cooking and looking after the family. That's the generation, right? So you guys do get together every once in a while, and you have a son. Now, we won't go into too much detail about how Paul came along. But I guess we got you for Paul. So come out here. I'm going to show you how you get born? Come out here. June, just move your feet apart like that. There you go. And Colin, you get down on the floor. And just crawl through, would you? Oh, if birth was so easy. Now, don't grow up too fast. You still got to be a kid. So where are you? You're going to go down and play on the floor. Okay, just go down and play on the floor. That's great. Good. And Mom, you're going to go down and spend some time and love your son? Now, what happens, do you think, inside for this guy when these two get close? I know I'm exaggerating this a little bit, but you know what? I just feel a little bit like, you know what? They got a thing going here and I don't fit here. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go work. And the more these two get close, the more that he works. And the more he works, the more these two get close. And this is good. You're being a good mom here, right? Now, every once in a while, June, you can come back up, and these two get together again. So come on back up. And now we have Raylyn. And you get to be born again. Now, you can have an option here if you want to go C-section, but go ahead and you get born. All right, now you can just go down and play on the floor. We're speeding this thing up a little bit here, right? All right. Now, there's 3 tasks that have to happen in order for succession to happen. Irregardless of whether these two stay on their farm or the ranch, there's 3 things that have to happen. What are they? These two have to what? They have to grow up. They have to become independent. If they don't grow up, by the way, you know what the presenting problem was? There's always an IP. You know what the IP is? It's the identified problem. And in about 75% of the cases, it's the daughter-in-law. And I said, when June called me and said, I want you to come and work with our family, I said, what's wrong with the daughter-in-law? And they said, she's been in a bad mood for about 9 years. Now, can you begin to understand why she's in a bad mood? Because this, by the way, this is a 29-year-old boy. You ever meet a 29-year-old boy? I remember, I worked with a 5-generation operation once, had a 75-year-old boy. The patriarch was still alive. Now, as it turned out, what had happened was George and June lived about 100 feet from where Paul and Megan lived. By the way, Megan, come down here. You and Paul are going to get married. But you know what? How many of you have ever seen a boy that never grew up but still got married? So what kind of a marriage partner do you think he's going to be? By the way, key principle here. Yeah, you can get down and play with your husband there. That's great. Key principle here, folks, is this. When you get married, it's imperative that you transfer your loyalty from your primary, not your love, but you transfer your primary loyalty from your family to your spouse. But this guy's still married to the farm because Dad's holding out the carrot that says, one day you're gonna get this place. We don't know what one day is. We don't know what this place is, but you're gonna get it one day. So he's still working for a carrot. Now, what had happened was, this is a grain farm. Do you know what happened? There's 100 feet between Paul and Megan's house and George and June's house, and at 5:30 every single morning, what do you do on a grain farm at 5:30 in the morning? You should be asleep. Not George. You know what George is doing? He's on the phone with his boy. Hey, boy, are you up yet? Now, can you begin to understand why Megan's been in a bad mood for 9 years? Because there's no real plan. So there's 3 things that have to happen. These kids have to grow up. You stand up, you bet. You come up here. Dad has to do what? Dad has to step down. He's got to let go. And this is a difficult journey. It's not an event. He's got to step down. You step down with your husband. And now these 2 and 3, you come back in here. You can come around this way, Megan. I know you're Rianne. And you guys become partners. But you can't become partners until you've stepped down and until these grow up. So there's 3 tasks. Growing up, stepping down, and partnering. And independent of whether they stay on the farm or not, we all got to go through those 3 stages. Can we give these 5 folks a round of applause? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, you guys. I just wanted to give you a visual image. Now, what I'm going to suggest is this, because we've got a short amount of time. Growing up, letting go, and partnering. I'm going to turn that into 3 strategies. And these are the 3 strategies that I'm going to offer to you in the next half an hour. You got to create safety, you got to allow for autonomy, and you got to have empathy. Those are the 3 strategies that I want you to leave with. And every one of you, and they all interact with each other. They're not a linear process. This is messy, it's imperfect, and we got to have a lot of patience with each other. Let's talk first of all about safety. I took a leadership course from a cellular biologist just before the pandemic. And what I learned is that all cells have 2 roles. They'll do one of 2 things in your body. And this is a biologist. And he said cells will either protect or they'll grow. Can't do both. You'll protect or you'll grow. Now, let's look at the brain. There's at least 2 sides to the brain. I'm going to just simplify this. There's a wizard brain and there's a lizard brain. And your wizard brain is the part that helps you grow. That's all about creative thinking and planning and high trust and collaboration and engagement. The lizard brain is what protects you. And the lizard brain is it's your autonomic nervous system, continually on guard for danger. It helps you survive. By the way, if you'd like a copy of these slides, I've got my book on my book table over at the holistic management table in the trade show. If you leave me your business card or an email address, I'll get you the slides complimentary, so you don't have to. But feel free to take pictures of them too and pass them around. I'm a farmer. I just throw out seeds here, and I hope it'll be helpful to you. I don't know when they'll grow. But so we're in this process. If you want people to grow, guess what? You can't be protecting yourself. Now, let me tell you a little story about this. This happened to me this spring. I'm out with the dogs. I take my dogs out into the sanctuary every morning. And we're having a nice little talk, and I'm relaxed, and my brain's going. And I'm thinking about a project that I've got at work that's going to take creativity and planning and high trust and collaboration and engagement. And I'm deeply engaged in a thought process. And all of a sudden, the woods in front of me start to rustle, and I got a bear running straight at me. The dogs, those critters, had turned around and turned a bear right on me. Now, the bear, I'm telling you, was about as close as this front row table here. That's how close the bear was. Now, imagine that moment. Do you think I'm capable of creative thinking, planning, high trust, collaboration, and engagement? Do you think my brain is capable of that in that moment? It is biologically impossible to grow at the same time that I'm protecting myself. I have automatically gone into protection mode. I am now into fight or flight. I have been activated. That bear ran past me. He was a friendly guy, actually. He's just scared. He ran right about as close as the edge of that stage, and there's a picture of him up in that tree. After he got up there, I realized, I can settle down enough to take a picture of him. I didn't get a picture of him running at me, because that would take thinking. Now, what's the difficulty here? When you're in a protective mode, you can't be open to dialogue or engagement or trust because you're into protection. And so what your lizard brain does is it gets into a fight, flight, freeze, and a fawn is a new term that's coming out in psychology today. What it means is when you're under stress, you just run around and take care of everybody. Negate yourself and look after everybody else if you're feeling stressed. And it's all, bless you, young man. I appreciate you being here. You're hanging in there, buddy. That's so cool. I love it. You look very attentive. What's your name? What's your name, buddy? You would rather eat than talk to me. I get it. No problem. You just sit in there and enjoy it. Anyway, where the heck was it? So we get this stress response, but you can't be in the C state and the F state at the same time. And if you're in the F state, you can't possibly be growing. And now it's designed to say, I'm going to take you into the F state, and then it's designed to relax, go back into relaxation. That needs to be the default state. That is what we call having a relaxed time together, enjoying each other. Here's what happens. You get a chronic F state. If it stays in the F state, here's what happens. You get frustration, restlessness, wound up, on edge, difficulty concentrating, irritability, impatience, tension, chronic inflammation. It impacts your body to stay in that F state. Body pains, joint, muscles, gastrointestinal issues, depression, anxiety, memory loss, sleep disturbance, skin issues, over control. You can't believe how many entrepreneurs I've met who are building very successful businesses fueled by being under stress. They're raised under stress, they're constantly under stress, and they put all that into a business. And they wonder why they die of a heart attack when you're 60. Burnout from people pleasing is another symptom of being in the F state all the time. And a lot of us were raised in the F state. Now, I've had people say, well, I only lose my temper once a month. What's the big deal? But here's my thing. When you lose, by the way, is yelling ever appropriate in a family? Not unless you're saving somebody's life. But we yell all the time as if it's normal. Here's my point, folks. You say, I only yell once a month. I only lose my temper once a month. Well, do you schedule it? Do you let your family know, listen, on the last Friday of every month at 3 o'clock, I'm going to lose my temper. So you might just want to stay away. And don't take it personally. It's my problem. No, you don't schedule it. It comes how? Spontaneously. And so everybody else on guard. And you create a high-stress family. And everybody's protecting themselves. You say, what's the big deal? I never know when the next shoe's going to drop. Okay? How many of you know about low-stress cattle handling? Why do you have low-stress cattle handling? You know, we buy all our beef in Alberta from a guy named Dylan Biggs because I know his animals are loved. And you know what? The meat is better meat because his animals are loved than you buy in the supermarket. The last few minutes, he does his own butchering. The last few minutes is very critical. You stress animals right before you kill them, and that is going to impact the meat. You know this from hunting wild meat. If you stress an animal before you kill it, it can destroy the meat because of the hormones that get released into the system. Not to mention, the whole environment changes when you're in low stress. This is what I love about the calmness in the parents in this room. This is low stress people handling, folks. It really is. I'm on the board of an organization called Wayfinders Wellness, and it's an organization that we run a live ranch, a working ranch for first responders and veterans who come home with PTSD. And we create a sanctuary for them where they can go and settle down their nervous system. We don't talk about their trauma. We're not clinicians in that role. What we are is we create an environment where we run a horse program, a bee program, because when you're interacting with bees, I have learned so much about myself working with bees because they won't sting you unless they feel like you're scared. If you're scared of them, they'll go into a stress response and they'll sting you. They don't want to sting you because they lose their life. So what you do is you learn how to be relaxed with them and you learn about yourself. Well, the same thing is true with horses. You understand this. All of you folks work with horses at one time or another. How do you know if a horse feels safe around you? Well, what we know is you put them in a round paddock and you get 4 gestures. They put their ears towards you, their lips, they lick and chew, they lower their head, and they make a smaller circle. And every horse will do this. You put them in a round paddock and you experience a horse trusting you. We're not saying you make it easy. Being safe doesn't mean you make it easy, but you create an environment where you're not activated, where your stress response is low. This is what I love about my daughter. This is actually just an excuse to introduce you to my granddaughter, my newest granddaughter that was born this summer. Now, my daughter is an amazing mother. I know that I'm biased, but she's not amazing as a mother because she's terribly skilled, any more skilled than any other parent. Who knows what skills are necessary when you're bonding with a child and introducing them to this world that we live in? She's not necessarily more skilled, but you know what she is? She's relaxed. This is the most important thing you can be as a mother and as a father, is to be relaxed. Way better parent than I was. Now, she started 10 years after I did. She's parenting 31. I started parenting 21. So when the baby comes over, she's in Ottawa, but so we spent probably 3 weeks with her this last summer and fall. When the baby's crying, I'm saying, baby's fussy. Haley will put her arm around me. No, the baby's not fussy. She's just sad. And she means it. She just needs, whether it's comforting, she just understands. She's so connected. But she is at peace with the process. Not every minute, but she understands that the greatest gift she can give is her relaxation. I wish I would have known that when I became a parent. So how do you know if people around you are safe with you? This is a very important question. You got to put this on your radar. I'm going to give you my list. You can come up with your own list. They seek your advice. I've had executives tell me, oh, I've got an open door policy, but they never come and talk to me, but I've done my job. I got my door open. Maybe they're not coming in there for a reason. They open up with you. They share their dreams, their values, their goals. They challenge you. People that don't feel safe aren't going to challenge you. They're just going to hide. They get past polite. You don't want to be polite. That's not what a good family is. Genuine, that's what I want. And you both are relaxed. This is some of the indicators. Many of us know how our cattle are stressed more than we know about our siblings or our parents or our kids. You understand cattle. When cattle are stressed, they are not good to work with. But we don't ask the same. It's the same deal with people. Sometimes we hide to protect ourselves, folks. And if you find yourself hiding, you're not going to grow and be together and engage with each other. Now, how do you hide? We procrastinate. By the way, I'm hiding right now. We have to sit down and redo our will and talk about dying and talk about what's going to happen if one of us dies. And that is not easy to do because you got to face your mortality. None of us are going to get out of this thing alive. And I'm telling you, it's easy for me to hide right now. I just keep procrastinating. Talking to our lawyer, because we got to redo this thing. Complaining. Yeah, I'd rather complain. Gossip. Rather talk about you than talk with you. Staying busy. Work. I'll just go to work. I'm too busy to do any of this conversation stuff. Way too easy to just go to work. And we all learn these ways, not because we're bad people, because we learn to protect ourselves. Because we didn't get the sense of knowing how to do that. It's not a well-developed muscle. Working, and then the end of the line is addiction. I work probably 20 hours a week volunteering my time with addicts that's the last resort. They just escape life, escape reality. Okay? A lot of problems in this world would disappear if we talk to each other instead of talk about each other. All right, that's safety part. Got it? Safety doesn't mean you're easy on people. Doesn't mean you don't have high standards. It just simply means we pay attention to our inner state and pay attention to the state of the people that we work with. And ask yourself, how safe is it to be with me? Autonomy. I'll go through this one relatively quickly. Here's my definition of autonomy. Personal agency, the commitment to follow your own path, free from the approval of others, to trust yourself, to make independent decisions, and face the consequences of your choices. That's my definition of autonomy. And every single person in this room has to get to that point. Now, if you're sitting there waiting for your parents to give you the farm, this is not autonomy. Say, you know what? I'm going to take the choice to move forward with what I have to do. You see, the Japanese have a word for this. It's called ikigai, your reason for being. Every one of us have unique abilities and passion and contribution. And I always say, I don't like to fix people. What I'd like to do is fit people. Every single person in this room has a set of unique abilities that you do better than anybody else on the planet. You have a passion. Where will you make a contribution? And hope maybe you can find a place on the farm, and maybe you don't find a place on the farm. Now, when you get paid to do your ikigai, we call that a vocation. If you do it in your volunteer time or away from what you get paid for, we call that an avocation. But everybody here, I would suggest, to have autonomy needs to find their ikigai, their reason for being, what life is calling you to. And maybe it's on the farm and maybe it's not. I want to share with you my daughter. Now, we live in a sports town. And if you didn't play hockey and you didn't play soccer, you didn't fit in. And my daughter never fit in. She was more interested in movie producers than she was in sports heroes. And she never found her voice until she was in high school. And she found a musical theater teacher. And that was her reason for being. And I'm going to tell you, what she said is it's more important to be yourself than it is to be popular. Being popular only lasts till school's done. Being yourself lasts a lifetime. That was her reason for being. And then what she did is she took her fine arts degree at the University of Alberta. And a month, you know what she did for a month? She lived on the streets in Edmonton taking a clown class. She was a clown. And if you look into her eyes, you know what you'll find? You will find this is her reason for being. And she's a beautiful teacher. I wish she would have taken... I created a space for her. Her and I do a podcast together. Dawn's been on our podcast. And I wish she would have taken over my business and taken this, but it's not her path. She's a high school teacher. She's now on mat leave with their baby, a young baby. But what she's doing is working with young kids who have learning challenges. And she does a musical theater for them. And through theater, they find their place in the world. And that's her place in the world. That's her autonomy. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and then go and do it, because what the world needs, folks, is for you to come alive. Even those bird guys, they were really alive up here. They're doing what they're meant to be doing. I love that. My youngest daughter, she's a police officer. That's her thing. It's not a career I would have chosen for her. But she has found her path. She just loves this. And she really looks at policing like she's not after the bad guys. What she's after is to support the victims of crime and help them, give them a leg up and be an ally for victims of crime. She doesn't care about how many speeding tickets she writes or how many bad guys she brings into jail, because most of them get off anyway. She doesn't care about any of that. But she has deeper values, but she's found her place within the police force. My oldest daughter, she's a potter. Now, she works for a corporation, does all their marketing, but this is her real love. This is her avocation. She comes home, she's got to do pottery on the weekends. This is what she loves. We've all got a thing, our thing. What is that? All right. My mother, in her journal, found this. Every parent, no matter how hard they try, will be both a blessing and a curse to their children. How many of you can relate to that? Good luck trying to make our kids happy. My hope is that my children will appreciate the blessing, if not immediately, then later in life, and perhaps more importantly, they'll take the curse and, like an oyster irritated by a grain of sand, over time use it as a catalyst to build layers of character and understanding, thus producing a pearl. What she understood was, it's not your upbringing that determines you. It's your choices about how you respond to your upbringing. How will you make what you were raised with into something important for the world to receive? Okay? My mother would say this. It's what you contribute, what you make out of this upbringing. Okay? All right. Empathy. We got to open our hearts to each other, folks. Steve Covey taught me years ago, my university professor taught me years ago that relationships are like a bank account. And you either make deposits or you make withdrawals. And if you invest in a relationship, sooner or later you're going to make some withdrawals, but make sure you make some deposits. Here's what I want you to do. Think about the and by the way, economics will tell you this. You can't make a withdrawal until you what? Make a deposit. So look around the family. Maybe it's your parents. I don't care whether you're in business together. Think about the kids that aren't in the business with you. Think about the people in your life. Think about your key stakeholders, people who are here to help you and who are you here to help them. Maybe it's your kids' coaches. Maybe it's your grandkids. And ask yourself this question. Where are the relationships are in the black and which ones are in the pink? And maybe the only thing you're going to do today is come out of here and say, I need to make some deposits with so-and-so in this particular area in their life. You see, here's some examples of deposits. Displaying kindness and courtesy, encouragement, listening versus telling. Just watch the relationship between how much you talk and how much you listen. We got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Catching people doing things right, keeping promises, clear expectations, showing loyalty in people's absence, apologizing, being present, putting that phone down and being present. These are just some examples. Folks, I'm going to encourage you to take one person in your family today that maybe it's the person that you're in biggest conflict with or the biggest tension or that you don't feel safe with. Take them for lunch. Now, you could just drive around in the truck, but you get too darn distracted in the truck because you always find something to do. Take them for lunch. And here's a series of questions. First of all, decide on a goal. We're going to understand each other. We don't need to agree with each other, but we're going to understand each other. Establish ground rules. No persuading, defending, interpreting. Just be curious. Listen with empathy. What issues in the world deeply concern you? What matters to you? What's your goal in the next 10 years? What do you struggle with the most? What are you most afraid of? What are you having to let go of to make room for something new? What would you like? What did I ask? Oh, what would you like to ask me? These are just sample questions, but we need a little structure to get the conversation going. Doesn't matter what you talk about, but understand each other with some empathy. The seasons of well-being, we all have seasons. And these seasons are like living in Canada. They'll change all the time, but maybe you're in a disruptive time right now where you're full of fear and some uncertainty and you have some loss and some grief. Maybe you're depleted because you're working so hard. Maybe you're energized. Maybe you're renewed. There's a rule in our society that says you can't be below the line or there's something wrong with you. Folks, you know what I know? It's okay not to be okay. We just came out of a pandemic, and I don't think we've really healed from it yet. Every one of us went through loss. I lost my mother-in-law during the pandemic, and the big loss was I couldn't be with her when she died, and we couldn't have a decent bloody funeral for her. That's a loss. And if you don't deal with the losses, how are you dealing with those losses? If you don't talk about them and bring them, we learned this in high school biology. Sunlight's the best disinfectant. Now, you don't have to bring it onto Facebook. Too much sun will kill you. But you got to bring this out into the open in your family. If you don't, you get into anger, irritability, rage, divisiveness. We're seeing this all the time in our country in politics. And I suggest it's because we're not dealing with our disruption in our life. We're not dealing with the emotions, the primary feelings. And then depression comes when you take all that anger and turn it inside. I know this from my own anger. from my own depression. And when you talk to each other, you got to separate feelings from fixing. You can't fix feelings. How many of you can relate to having a bad day? My wife was having a bad day not long ago, and she was opening up with me, and I went into my fixing mode. We're taught to fix. How many of you understand this is not going to end in an intimate evening together? And I had a list of things she could do to feel better. And what she did is she walked away and went into her, it's no longer our bedroom, it was her bedroom. And I apologized and said, listen, Val, I realize I'm mad because you didn't take my great advice. But I'm not here to give you advice. And what did she need, folks? She just needed somebody to listen. You can't fix feelings. They're unfixable. Take that off your plate. And if you're talking to somebody who likes to fix things, just let them know. You're very worthwhile. You don't have to fix this. Now, after you get the feelings, then you can fix it. But don't try to mix them, okay? So in conclusion here, folks, I just want to share with you my passion about authenticity. In my book, The Other Everest, what I talk about is substance over superficial. Character over charisma. You know, just because somebody's charismatic doesn't mean they have character. And we have a society today that kind of puts people on who have charisma up on a pedestal. Character is the stuff you don't see. Service over self-interest. The whole notion is that we all know that the highest point on the planet is Mount Everest at more than 6,000 meters above sea level. What's less known, see, that's our success path. It's always up. We're growing. We're getting to the next height, the next summit. How are we going to grow this thing? Folks, that's not sustainable. And I think this room understands that. Understands that bigger isn't necessarily better. Let's go for greatness. Let's not go for size. It's what I call a small giant. Be a small giant today. Because eventually, you know what, that success path? What we don't understand is the other Everest journey is the journey down into the Mariana Trench, which is more than 8,000 meters below sea level. It's essentially a virtual inverted Everest. And eventually you're going to fall off that success path, and you're going to go through loss and illness and failure and adversity and divorce or hardship. And that's when your life really begins. Because then you get to face yourself. See, success isn't just about height, folks. It's also about depth. It's about who you are as a human being. Let's not label this. About every 10 years, I've had my own challenger deep journeys. I had polio when I was 4. And I had to recover from that, exiting from a fundamentalist religion when I was 25, walked away from all of my community and all of my source of security, and faced the world on my own. The snake pit of depression and addiction, I've had 2 significant depressive episodes in my life, and I could not do this work today if I hadn't had to walk through that darkness in my life and come out the other side. And what I've learned is that depression is not something to be feared. It's different for everybody, but it's not something to be feared. Anxiety is not something to be feared. Befriend it. Looking after my brother who died, I looked after my brother for 3.5 years while he died of a brain tumor. Redesigning my business in the pandemic and creating a new identity as I enter my golden years. These kind of happen about every 10 years. And I lean into this stuff. I've learned that in my life, not to be afraid of it. The Other Everest journey defined as embracing a time of great difficulty. Realizing and allowing the pain to break us open so that a stronger, wiser, kinder self can emerge. Through the lens of the Other Everest, adversity is viewed as something wanting to be born. You see, we delight in the beauty of a butterfly, but rarely acknowledge the changes it had to go through to get there. There's my brother. I did stuff with my brother I never thought I would do. I bathed him, I fed him, I massaged his feet. His dying, you know what it did for me? It awakened my living. And I dedicated my life during these 3 years to writing a book called Caring is Everything, and I dedicated it to my brother for what he taught me. He was a doctor in Sundre, Central Alberta, and he spent 35 years of his life, and he was loved by his community. He wasn't just respected and admired, he was loved. You see, life is a novel, folks. It's not a chapter. It's a novel. If your life were a book, what chapter? What would be its title? What would be a title of your life right now, and what chapter are you in? See, my son-in-law, he got into opioids when he was 19. And shortly after, well, actually, he got into opioids. He ended up on the street. Ended up, my daughter left him. And if you would have taken a snapshot when he was in his early 20s, he ended up in jail, 4 years in jail. And if you'd have taken a snapshot of that chapter in his life, it'd have been over. But you know what he did? He was given an option when he had 2 years in, that he could either go for treatment, because he got into fentanyl and all kinds of bad stuff. And he was given a choice that he could either go for treatment or spend the next 2 years of his life in prison. And he decided to go for treatment. He went for treatment, sobered himself up, got himself sober, and he started a program in Utah where addicts get to come in and they have a whole fitness and a whole community for recovery. And now he's in his 40s and he's making a difference in the world. It's a different chapter in his life. See, we got to look at our life not as a novel, but as not as a chapter, but as a novel. Everybody has a story. And my encouragement, folks, is to take some time to hear each other's stories. We've all got a story. I'm going to show you, my last work here is I'm going to show you a video. We got 5 more minutes? I'm going to show you a video. You wonder, this doesn't have anything to do with farming, but it has everything to do with farming because it has to do with humanity. Because what I want you to do is that I want you to know that it's a healthcare context. But none of us get through a life without having to use our healthcare system. And it's a human video to show you how we never know what people are dealing with. And what we need to do is to have empathy to hear the story. Just enjoy. Little line in there, I hope you appreciate our Canadian healthcare system, folks. Mr. Rogers said this, frankly, there isn't anyone you couldn't learn to love once you hear their story. Let's take some time to open our hearts with each other, realize why we're in this work. My last slide, and I promise this will be my last one, is since my brother's death, I've been on a project. I'm going to leave you a little project here. This is my wall of influence. These are the 25 people who have helped shape me and make me who I am today. Everybody there has a story. And I've sent them all a thank you letter. And I got that one from Dawn. So here's a couple questions I want to leave you with for reflection. That's all I've done today is just open your heart, have you talk to each other in perhaps some new ways, with some new understanding and love, because it's all about love. But number one question is, who would be on your wall if you did this? And if they're in this room, folks, don't take a moment today to forget to go and tell them why they're on their wall and why they made your wall. What qualities did they have? And every quality that you identify in somebody else, you've got it in yourself because you couldn't see it in another if you didn't have it in you. But the most important question is the last one I'm going to leave you. Whose wall will you one day earn the right to be on? What if every day you started the day with a vision that one day you're going to earn the right to be on somebody's wall in your life? Not because the wall's important, but because the impact is important. Remember that we all matter. Remember that love is at the core of all of this. Remember that relationships matter. And thank you very, very much for the precious privilege of spending this hour with you and spending this with you in your life. It's a great honor. Thank you very, very much, everybody.